Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot and a member of the PMDG 737 tech team. Today let's have a look at the Autoland in the PMDG Boeing 737-800 for Flight Simulator 2024. For this we are currently in a traffic pattern here in Perth, Australia, with the superb new airport from AirBus. So if you do like that airport, go check them out, and yes, they did give me a free copy for the purpose of some videos. Alright, so let's go right into the actual content of the video. Today we are going to demonstrate the Autoland capabilities of the airplane. So let's start by talking about the general Autoland capability of the 737, because there is a little bit of interesting stuff that we have to talk about. So contrary to your standard Airbus aircraft, the 737 is not certified for a no decision height approach unless you have the fail operational Autoland capability installed on the airplane. Now, most operators do not have this. An easy way to see if you have it is by looking at the MFD switching panel here. If you got the cancel recall button, then you have fail operational Autoland. If you don't have that, then you don't. Now, fail operational Autoland requires an additional servo to be installed in the aircraft's rudder, which adds a lot of weight and makes it maintenance intensive, which is the reason why most airlines do not choose to install this. Now, even without that fail operational Autoland, the aircraft can still land with a minimum of 50 feet radio, even if there is no minimum published on the chart. So if you fly Cat 3 approach, the minimum you need is 50 feet radio and 125 meters RVR, even if the charted minimum may be lower. That's simply due to aircraft limitations over here. Now, let's have a look into the setup that we've got to do for an approach like this. You do need the ILS frequency tuned on both sides. A single side is not enough. So if you need, for example, a DME to be able to fly the approach, then you cannot do an automatic landing on the 737. That's just a limitation of the airplane itself, unless the DME is obviously co-located with the ILS frequency. You also need both courses, and we need both autopilots operative for the airplane to be able to conduct an automatic landing. Now, going a little bit further and into a couple more details, let's have a look into what we're expecting from the airplane on the approach. So, once we're cleared for the approach, we are going to press the approach button and then also engage the second autopilot. Note that you can only do this if you actually receive the ILS frequency already. So be sure that the ILS is received and identified. An easy way of identifying it is by checking the approach reference page, where you can get the identifier of the associated approach, and you can cross-check this on the primary flight displays. Only when the approach is identified, you can actually fly the approach at all, but especially for an automatic landing. If you don't get the identifier, you may get incorrect ILS signals, to put it in a very easy way. Now, I will start configuring the airplane here, and while I'm doing that, let's take a moment to talk about what we expect to see on the approach itself. So with both autopilots selected, we expect to see Warlock and glide slope armed, and the green CMD. Now, once the localizer captures, we are going to select the runway heading on our MCP, and we expect to see single channel. Now, we have that just now, so let's set our runway heading 19R6. Intercepting the glide slope, we keep the single channel FMA, and glide slope is going to become active, and when that happens we're also going to select the go-around altitude, which conveniently for us today is also going to be 3,000 feet, so that we don't have to change any numbers here. And here we go, glide slope capture, go-around altitude 3,000, which we can also get from the FMC down here, is set. Now, let's take a moment over here to talk about the flap setting that we would be using. The aircraft is certified for automatic landings in both flaps 30 and flaps 40. For practical purposes though, flaps 40 is the setting that you're going to choose most of the time, because it results in a lower pitch angle on the approach, and therefore it's easier to see the approach lights on the approach. Especially when you are flying in hard IMC down to a minimum of 50 feet, where you really expect to see the approach lights just moments earlier with the minimum permissible RVR, then selecting flaps 40 provides a great advantage over flaps 30 just because of the lower deck angle. Also, what many captains do on an approach like this is to put their chair a little bit further up so that you can actually see at a better vertical angle. In order to be allowed to complete the approach, you have to see the approach lights, but a single light is technically speaking going to do from the approach lights. Now, continuing the approach, passing 1,500 feet radio altitude, we expect flare mode to arm, and that's going to become visible right down here underneath the glide slope FMA. At 50 feet radio altitude, the flare maneuver begins and the flight director bars are going to retract from view, and flare is going to become the active FMA. At 27 feet radio altitude, auto throttle is going to retard the thrust levers to idle, and upon touchdown we have to manually disengage the autopilot, and the auto throttle disengages 2 seconds after touchdown. The reason for this is that the 737's autopilot system, again, unless fail operational, is only equipped with a 2-axis autopilot, so it has no control to steer the airplane on the rollout. So that's a rather harsh limitation if you're used to your favorite Airbus aircraft, where you wouldn't have any of those problems. But 737, based on a slightly older airplane design, so that's what it is. So, if you're flying this in IMC, you've got to be stabilized by 1,000 feet. If you're flying it in VMC, the standard 500 foot gate does apply. However, it is worth mentioning that the airplane itself can continue the approach if you're stabilized by 500. So it's really a matter of the weather that decides on your stabilized approach gauge. Note that you can do an automatic landing out of an ILS Cat 1 approach, but more on that in a separate and dedicated video on the topic. Now we're established on the approach, we can quickly do the landing checklist here. Sound switch is continuous, recoil checked, speed brake armed, green light, landing gear down 3 green, auto brake 3 set, flaps 40, 40, green light, landing lights on, landing checklist complete. So 500 radio, flare armed. And now we can nicely see the pitch and power values of the aircraft as well here. With flaps 40, you're looking at about 0 degrees pitch, and the thrust should be equal to the gross weight minus 4%, obviously unless the airplane has to do any corrections here for winds, turbulence, etc. So at 50 feet we expect flare mode to come on.
Approaching minimums.
Checked. We see everything. Continue, and as you can see, flare mode comes on.
20.
Auto throttle goes to retard.
10.
Touchdown. So, autopilot's off. Speed brake up, thrust as normal. 100 knots. 80 knots. 60 knots, manual brakes, and that's it. Welcome to Perth. So, that's the automatic landing on the Boeing 737 in the configuration that you're going to find with most operators. I do hope you found this one interesting. Leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. Let me know if you've recently done an Autoland in the simulator and how you find those to go. Thank you very much for watching. As always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.